Hello and welcome to the Music Survival Guide, the independent musician's guide on how to survive the music industry. My name is Phil, a mixing engineer. I hope you're doing wonderfully well out there, and the beginning of April, well, halfway through April as this episode is released, has gone well for you, and it's brought you great success and joy. I don't know why I said it like that, but there we are, done now. This week I'm talking with Izzy McPhee, who is a mastering engineer. She actually works with Weird Jungle, which is a mastering collective here in the UK, well worth checking out. We talk about all sorts of things in this podcast. It's a really great and sometimes quite nerdy one, which is always the best kind of podcast in my mind. We talk about things like finding her place in the music scene, how she eventually found her way into mastering as a profession, following her musical instincts when mastering, how she goes about that, how she focuses on that when making the important decisions, and investing in important equipment, not necessarily the most exciting equipment, but the best equipment to make the best use of her skills and help her clients in the best way that she can. So I'm just going to say on with the interview. So today on the podcast, I am joined by Izzy McPhee. Welcome. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Well, no problem at all. So my first question, as always, is from an online random question generator. And my question for you this week is, what is the last dream that you can remember about? Which is weirdly phrased.
That's a good one. I have, notoriously have very vivid dreams. To the point sometimes that I wake up and I'm distressed or just I feel like I've lived it, but I'm trying to think, but then I often just forget them. So let me have a think. The last dream I can remember, I think it was one about my dog, and I think I was on a really nice walk with her.
Oh.
And then there was probably some weird detail, but generally I think it was a nice one of a dog walk. That's what I dream about these days, nice dog walks.
There's worse things to dream about.
Exactly, I'll take that.
Yeah. I mean, my last dream was very bizarre. It was this very strange thing where my wife thought I was on Class A drugs and I wasn't. I don't know. I don't know.
Those ones are stressful.
It was very odd.
Yeah.
And I did wake up not quite knowing if it was real or not. It was
when it's jarring like that and you're like, did that just happen? That's freaky.
Hey ho. I've also got a dream I had not so long ago about, well, no, it was a long time ago now, about Gandalf jumping from leaf to leaf on giant leaves. That was great fun. Let's not talk about that now. Let's talk about more relevant things like music. So how did you get into music in the first place? What was your route into enjoying this side of life?
So I grew up in a musical loving family, not necessarily musical in terms of playing instruments and stuff, but all generations of my family were always playing music. So I really grew up with all genres and everyone fighting to play the CD they wanted to play or what were we going to play in the car trip, things like that. I think that really informed my love for music and a wide range of music as well. So that was kind of how I got into loving music, but how I got into it as a career. I actually studied television at uni, which I really liked, but I specialised in sound. So I was using Pro Tools, I was manipulating audio, but it was also at uni when I started DJing for the first time.
Wow.
Yeah, that
is cool.
It is. And it was 10 years ago. I've been DJing for 10 years now, which is crazy. But yeah, that was, I suppose, reframing music for me. And it was a time when I was looking at it in a new way, and music that I'd loved for years, I was looking at it more critically and I was really enjoying that. But I didn't see that as a sustainable career for me personally, in that a lot of late nights, a lot of up and downs, and I like a kind of bit more routine and stability. So yeah, I was like, how can I bring these things together? After uni, I was like, this is it. I want to work in music. I need to figure out what that looks like. So I was trying basically everything. I was doing a bit of live sound. I was doing a bit of mixing. And I actually had some support from an initiative called Saffron. And they're an initiative that tries and gets more women and gender minorities into technical roles in music. So I did a kind of development scheme with them. And through that scheme, I had financial support and other forms of support. So I was able to kind of try everything out. And I was really liking it all. And it was actually through that I was teamed up with Katie Tavini, she was my industry mentor. And she was like, you should try mastering. Obviously, that's what she does. And she was like, I was like, I don't know. I don't know if I could do that, because it had always been, in my eyes, quite a scary thing, extremely technical. And there just wasn't really that much information about it compared to the other forms of music that I was doing, so mixing and things like that. But she was like, no, try it, and I can give you feedback, I can give you support. And I just did a master for someone else on the scheme, and Katie listened to it and she was like, this is great, like, considering this is your first ever go, it's really good and you should consider trying more and more. So I did, and I quite quickly fell in love with it. I mean, I didn't have people knocking down my door to work with me or anything like that, but I was just really enjoying the process. And then shortly after that scheme ended, I was like, okay, mastering is the thing. How's this going to work? And Katie actually started Weird Jungle, which is the mastering collective that I'm a part of with her. Spoiler alert. And she invited me to join the collective as the junior engineer. So I now work as part of that collective, have done for nearly 3 years. And I get ongoing mentorship and support from the rest of the team and the other engineers. So yeah, I'm still learning, but I'm in a unique position where I get to learn with support from other engineers like that. So yeah, it's amazing and I love it, and I can't imagine myself doing anything else now.
Yeah, no, it's a wonderful and slightly bizarre industry to be part of at times. I mean,
it is.
So Weird Jungle is yourself, Katie and Stephen, isn't it, at the moment?
Yes, so that's the 3 engineers. As I say, I'm kind of like the junior engineer. They're the senior engineers. But yeah, it's the 3 of us as engineers, and we have 2 managers as well, Carla and Brendan. And yeah, it works really well. It's a very unique thing because we're all based in different parts of the UK. So we kind of call it like a virtual mastering house. So you have that support, you have colleagues, which is really nice in mastering because generally it can be quite solitary. But so yeah, we have each other. We're just kind of at the end of a phone call or a message or something like that.
Yeah. And so there's always someone that you can go to questions with, but you can also go and go, I've had a really hard day. This has happened, that's happened, or that kind of thing. I guess it's kind of quite a wonderful support network. It's almost like the only comparison I can give is it's almost like being part of an office, isn't it? Where you've got a collective group of people who are all doing the same thing, who you can talk to about what it's really like to do that kind of thing day in, day out.
Yeah, exactly that. And I think the nature of mastering now is, obviously there is still a few big mastering houses, but there's definitely not as many as there used to be. So it can be really hard to break into. It can be really hard to find people to learn from and kind of work your way up. And that was one of the reasons why Katie and Brendan wanted Weird Jungle to be a thing, was to actually offer that in a way that was flexible. So, like I couldn't really, for various reasons, wouldn't be able to move to London and work in a mastering house there. But I've been able to learn and kind of work my way up our own mastering house in a way. So yeah, I think it's an amazing thing. And I hope that, other people could see how worthwhile it can be creating an opportunity like this, because I've been able to really grow in 3 years. Like I have my own returning clients and just generally a lot more confident in my ability now. Stephen and Katie quality check my work if I need them to, but that's less and less. And generally, it's just having that support system. If, as you say, if you're having a bad day, sometimes you just need a sanity check, don't you? Of like, can I actually do my job? And then they're like, yes, you can. You're like, okay, thank you, just checking. So yeah, it's really nice.
I think everyone can relate to that. Everyone has a day where you go, no, I don't think I'm very good at what I'm doing right now.
Yeah, exactly.
To be honest, especially musicians as well. I
think that's it. There's like, I think in music especially, imposter syndrome is such a big thing. Like there's people at such different levels and it feels like you could always be doing more. I think that's often the thing with creative things, right? Is, could I tweak it a little bit more? That is one of the things I actually like about mastering, is everyone's gone through that turmoil before me. And really, I can't tweak anything too major. So yeah, it's quite good in that sense.
See, this is the interesting thing, because I'm a mixing engineer and I find that really limiting. And they're like, no, I really want to go in and look at the details. And,
Yeah.
and you get that kind of, I don't know, that 100-mile high perspective. That's not a phrase. Is that a phrase?
It sounds right to me. Yeah, no, you're completely right. It's like what I love about mastering. I think a lot of people are in your position and are like, oh, I wouldn't like that. I want to be able to really dive in and spend like days on a track, but I can do like 12 tracks in a day. So it's very different in that perspective. But it's something that I really love about it is, you know, how different each track can be in one day, and it keeps it really interesting and exciting for me.
Totally. So to take, I guess, a step back from the details for a moment, for anyone who is a musician listening and maybe isn't 100% sure, not what we're talking about, because I think people know that mastering is a thing, but I guess I'm going to ask the question, obviously, what is mastering? What? It's a very open-ended question, deliberately, I guess. Yeah,
and I'm sure lots of people would maybe have slightly different answers, but as a kind of top-down look at mastering and how I see it is it's basically the final step in the whole music production process. So, as we said earlier, all the writing, production, recording, mixing has been done. Generally, I would receive a stereo file, so the final track, the final mix. And the main thing is critical listening in a controlled environment. So I have a studio that is acoustically treated. I know my speakers really well. Listening in a controlled environment, and it's basically like a final quality check. So I'm listening for anything that anybody's missed, which, you know, when you've been so dialed into a mix or recording or whatever, it can happen. So yeah, listening for anything. I'm not necessarily changing any of the kind of production elements or anything like that. I wouldn't be affecting reverb or stems or anything like that. I'm just, the way that I look at it is giving it that final 10%, that final polish to make it just really perfect, make it loud enough, and get it ready for various formats. So that could be digital, and mostly these days that's like streaming platforms, Spotify, Tidal, or getting it ready for cassette, vinyl, CD. Those are all popular still, and they require kind of extra formats. So I would get those, send them off to the artist, and then they would send them out into the world for distribution, whatever that looks like for them.
Do you ask them, I guess before you start, do you ask them like what formats are you going to produce this in, and then tailor it depending on what they answer, or do you just tend to give them everything, like here's everything you could possibly need for all the formats you might ever want to use? How do you do that? So
in terms of file formats, so as in like WAVs, MP3s, we would tend to give them the highest res WAVs that we could. So generally, once everything's been okayed, your final master package would contain multiple file formats. So maybe like a WAV in 44.1 kilohertz, 24-bit, that's pretty standard. We'd send an MP3 for referencing. Sometimes radios request MP3s only.
Do they? Wow.
Yeah, a few of them still do, which is pretty crazy, really. But yeah, so we kind of give people everything in that sense, but the formats that are related to cassette, vinyl, CD, we would only give you those if you requested them. So yeah, but as I say, it's quite common these days. People doing physical formats, especially cassette, is really popular again, which I love.
I find that very strange, but then it's not very common in my world. So I'm more in like the rock and metal world. I don't know any band doing cassette.
Yeah, I mean, I'm working with a lot of independent artists, like self-funded artists, and I think it's an affordable way to have a physical format, basically, and it's a bit of merchandise that you can customize and make look really cool, and it's, you know, quite nostalgic and retro for a lot of people. So yeah, I think it's I'm noticing that they're quite popular again.
So I guess something that a lot of people don't think about, that I've kind of started to think about more and more at the moment, and this is such a nerdy topic, but it's part of mastering, is the beginnings and ends of songs. Like, it's one of those things that I almost start, I'm trying not to, because I'm trying to see, when I'm mixing, I try and see the big picture, but I think, how long do you leave at the beginning of the song before the actual music starts? How long do you leave at the very end to kind of for it to tail off? So I don't know where that comes into the equation for you in mastering.
I'm glad you're asking, actually, because it's one thing that we repeatedly say to people is please leave at least 2 seconds of silence at the start. Not necessarily that those will stay in your final versions. It's just for us when we're working, it's really helpful to have a couple of seconds, because quite often if you're just exporting your track from your session and it's starting at 0, then it could introduce like a clip or a pop at the start, which again is fine, but it's one of those things that can be easily avoided just by adding a few seconds on the start. And it's the same on the end, just giving us a little bit of room. And that is one of the things of mastering, is unless specified that you want to, cut off that tail for some reason, we would just kind of use our instinct to be like, right, they need a very short couple of maybe like 200 milliseconds before the music comes in, and a nice long fade on the end. Like, that would be something that we would kind of decide, and especially in an album sense, that would be quite important for sequencing. So
just the wow, we're talking about silence, but we are. Does the amount of time that you leave at the beginning and end vary from track to track on an album? Is it kind of just like this feels like it needs quite a quick break because it's quite a kind of punchy end and start of song between them all? Yeah,
generally, I am not super precious about the amounts. I will pretty much purely go on vibes. So what feels right, especially again, like with albums, you might want gapless playback and you might want one track to go into the other. So in that case, obviously we can't necessarily have any silence, but I can quite easily do that in Wavelab, which is what I use for mastering. So yeah, a lot of it is just feel, and that's something that has really come with, again, I think just being such a music listener and lover. That all feels quite instinctual to me, which is why I think I took to mastering, because a lot of it is instinct, I think. So
totally. How do you again, I'm just thinking of things that I encounter that I'm wondering about. How do you, as a mastering engineer, try and ensure consistency from track to track on an EP or an album or whatever it may be? So I'm just thinking for myself, I'll go into the weeds on a particular song and get that one finished, and then go into the weeds in the next song. And, I'm trying to make them work together just from my perspective, but I'm focusing on that one song. And I guess a mastering engineer, you have that kind of, that kind of wider perspective. How do you try and get as much as you can consistency from track to track to kind of help the feel of the album or EP? I
would say the biggest thing is loudness. So cohesive loudness, which is obviously such a big part of mastering, but it's something that can be often quite challenging, because these days, especially, people are working with like lots of producers. Like some albums that are coming out now, people are working with 12 different producers for 12 different tracks, and maybe even multiple mix engineers. So that is definitely a big part of the job. Yeah, I would say the first thing for cohesion would always be loudness and getting everything level in that sense. And then it would just be probably EQ would be my next point. And generally those two tools are doing all the heavy lifting for me. Obviously I'll use other tools along the way, like saturation and compression, but 9 times out of 10, it's just EQ and limiting, like mid-side EQ. And yeah, that's how I'm doing a lot of cohesion. And again, a lot of it will just be instinct, like taking a step back and just listening and thinking, do I need to tweak something to make this feel more at home with the other track? And yeah, sometimes I'm not even sure what it is that I'm doing to do that, but as I say, I think EQ and limiting are the main ones to get that cohesion.
Nice. So to kind of, I don't know, I'm just interested in going through your kind of thought process.
Yeah, please do. I love being a big nerd and talking about this stuff.
This is the kind of thing I think about a lot and I don't get to talk about a lot. So there we are. When it comes to mastering, so say someone's handed you, let's say it's a 4-track EP, and you've loaded it up, you've got the 4 songs in your system. What are your thought processes? I guess firstly, are you thinking musical and then thinking technical, or how does that work for you?
I'm honestly pretty much always thinking musical. Even though there's a level of technicality, when I'm actually mastering, I want to be about 90% musical, 10% technical, or do all the musical stuff first and then do the technical stuff that I kind of have to do. So yeah, and actually I would generally do all my kind of first listen and quality check in RX, because it's almost so I can't start tweaking other than a bit of audio repair if I need to, but generally I'll do it all my first listen in RX, take notes if I need to of just like what I'm feeling or what I think it needs, and then I would take it into Wavelab and start the tweaking. So
you're very much going off the kind of the vibe of it, and you're not necessarily thinking, oh, this needs to be, I don't know, this needs to be this many decibels louder or quieter, or we need to, that kind of thing.
Absolutely not. Like generally, again, as I say, I would start if I would just I actually start with limiting first, and unless I have a loudness reference from the mix engineer, then I would just do that on vibe. And what's informing my decision of how loud I think it needs to be is context, basically. So genre, where it's going to be played, what format is it going to be mostly listened on? Is it going to be listened to on a big club sound system or on like earpods? So those are all the things that are going through my head to inform those decisions. And then right at the end, I would look at how much I'm limiting, true peak, everything like that. But in terms of loudness, like I'm not looking at the LUFS meter. I'm not hung up on that stuff at all. I'm just more interested in getting it to sound as good as it possibly can, in the context that I think that will be. And I don't necessarily always get that right, but without sounding bullshit, I'd like to think I do most of the time, because again, I think so much of that is instinctual. And it also just comes with having a good line of communication with clients, which I'm really keen on doing. We always ask if they have any references or notes that they want to give us, so that can help inform that decision for me as well.
It's interesting that you don't pay much attention to the LUFS. Sorry, anyone listening, loudest units full scale. It's a way of measuring how loud a piece of music is, or how loud a piece of sound is. There's a whole lot more that could be said about it, but we're not going to go into it now. The Google's there for you. Sorry, quite brutal, but there we go. The reason I'm interested in that is that I know that all the different ways of distributing music online, at least, all have levels that they want you to submit your audio at in an ideal world, and they'll generally kind of try and make audio conform to those levels depending on which particular bit of software it is, depends on what level it is. So I find it interesting that you don't focus on that and you don't really have a number that you're aiming for in amongst that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's something that a lot of not even a lot of mastering engineers, that a lot of people get hung up on. And don't get me wrong, sometimes clients will be like, I want this to be minus 10 LUFS. And in that case, if it's been specified, then I will look at the LUFS meter. I'm not like completely like, no, I'm anti-LUFS. It's not that. It's just, it doesn't necessarily inform my way of working. And my issue with adhering to it is, yes, Spotify says it wants this at minus 14 LUFS, but it was a different figure before and it could change again. So I actually think if you are adhering to that, you're kind of sticking your music in one period of time and you're not future-proofing it almost. So I think it's always better to just serve the music. And as I say, if the music, the context of it is that it's rock and you want it really loud, then don't do it at minus 14 LUFS, because you're going to be missing out on a big part of the sound by doing that. So it's something, as I say, I completely respect if some people want to be informed by that. And if they have an idea of they want it to be minus 10 LUFS because that's important to the sound. Like, for example, if I was working on a really dynamic classical piece of music, it might be out of place to really smash it up to like minus 7 LUFS or something. But yeah, I would just encourage people to like understand it, but as I say, not get too hung up on it, because I know Spotify feels like it really dominates at the moment, but actually I don't think it's going to last forever.
Ooh.
I'm quite anti Spotify. I don't use it at all. I use Tidal now because I'm quite passionate about, well, how Spotify doesn't pay artists fairly, and I just can't, work in music and fund something that is treating artists so poorly and funding other very questionable things. So yeah, I'm pretty anti Spotify, but that is my opinion of any streaming service, that I don't think that we should master for Spotify, Apple Music, or anything like that. I think just master for the music.
I've got to ask, I'm assuming you have decided on Tidal for a good reason, and so since there's going to be lots of bands and artists and people like that listening, what does Tidal do better than Spotify? So
Tidal, you can actually stream at higher quality, so I think it goes up to like 96 kilohertz, 32-bit, 24-bit, and now I'm just on the kind of basic plan. It's $10.99 a month, which is in the UK, which is, I'm pretty sure, very similar to Spotify now. And they pay artists a much better rate, and they also pay artists from the first stream, whereas Spotify, you won't get any payment until 1,000 streams, and then it's also a pittance. Tidal pays you a slightly higher rate. I mean, it's still not like a really decent amount of money. I'm not going to like beat around the bush there, but yeah, you can get paid from your first stream and you'll get paid a little bit more. And yeah, just generally you'll have a better listening experience. And also I actually think now, I've been using it for a year, maybe 2. I actually think now the algorithms are better than the Spotify ones and the music that it pushes me. So yeah, I'd highly recommend it.
I'm going to admit, I am a Spotify user, but that's mostly because I have been for years, and I just haven't thought about it. And I've been increasingly thinking about moving especially to Tidal, actually, given the stuff around artists and paying them a little bit more fairly. Not fairly, but a little bit more fairly. I'm going to put it that way. But what's kind of making me go, it's just because of all the playlists and things that I've built up on there. And I think I just need to get over myself and do it. I was
exactly the same, but there is now things online. I can't remember the name of them, unfortunately, because I did it a while ago. But you can pay a fee and it will move all of your playlists over. And now the library on Tidal, like when I first started using it, very occasionally there wouldn't be a song on there, but now I've never had that issue, and I have all of because same as you, I was using Spotify for years and I had hundreds of playlists and they were so specifically curated and I was so upset to lose them, but I didn't have to. They just all moved over quite nicely. So yeah.
Might have to look into all this, I have to say.
Yeah, do it.
Well, you may have another convert, but we'll see. So to kind of move over the subject a little bit, analog equipment, it's a whole debate on lots and lots of forums. What's your approach to your kind of philosophy around analog gear and using it or not using it in a mastering context? So
my current chain now, I don't have any analog gear. That's for various reasons. It's not because I'm super anti analog gear. The main reason is I haven't been able to get any yet. Like, it's expensive, and I think I really didn't want it to stop me doing this. So it was really important for me to build up a good mastering chain in the box, which I have confidently done now. And I invested in a really good converter interface and speakers and acoustic treatment. Those were the things that were more important to me to invest in. But don't get me wrong, I'm not anti-analog gear. I just think I don't like how it's almost used as a tool to gatekeep people, and this attitude of, well, you couldn't do that unless you have this £8,000 EQ. I just think that's not it's not true for a start, because when I started mastering, I was working on Yamaha speakers and a Focusrite interface, and I was on free plugins. And don't get me wrong, as I say, when I started, I wasn't like, charging people loads, and it was mainly just for me, but I was able to start and learn the skill on those tools. And then I've been able to upgrade things. But yeah, the main reason that I would be interested in getting analog gear, and I do want to down the line, is because it's an opportunity to not look at the screen, and it's quite tactile. Like, I'm quite a tactile person, I suppose, so I like the idea of being able to flick switches and turn knobs and things like that, and just take myself out of that intense looking at the screen for 8 hours a day. So that would be my main reason. And I have, like, both Stephen and Katie have outboard, and I've tried it and I do really like it, so I completely see the appeal. But yeah, I don't think it should be a limitation not having it. And I don't think you shouldn't work with a mastering engineer because they don't have an analog chain, because it's crazy what some of the emulations can do these days. Like, I know some mastering engineers that have had really big analog chains, and now they work fully digital because they are so pleased with the emulations they've been able to find. And they're like, well, why would I have all this stuff when I can completely, minimize the space, minimize the workflow? Like, the time involved with printing things to outboard can be pretty intense. So yeah, they're just like, it's not something I feel I need now. So I think it's like a lovely thing, but I wouldn't want anyone to feel like they couldn't do music if they didn't have it.
Totally. I mean, one thing I've got to admit, I've got a little collection down here of guitar amps which I use for reamping, and probably one of the things I enjoy most about them, or some of them, is their switches. Some of the switches on them are so nice to switch, and I don't know why. There's something in my head that just goes, yes, this was worth the money.
Yeah, 100%. There's nothing beats a good switch.
I mean, it's good that you focused on, I guess, the right things when you were upgrading, and it's not the exciting things. This is the honest reality. Buying a new converter is exciting, but isn't exciting. It's not going to be like some audio candy that you can go, it does this and I can switch this and do that. It just makes stuff sound better and come across clearer, which
Exactly.
is not very exciting, but is when you're mastering is essential, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, that's it. And I think, again, I've just been really lucky that I've had so much kind of guidance there and mentorship, and it's almost like Stephen and Katie, and actually a lot of other mastering engineers. I've been really lucky. I had some Arts Council funding, and I shadowed, I think, about 10 mastering engineers, like, all doing really different stuff. And it's like, with loads of years of experience, and they all said the same thing, like, yes, it's nice to have the analog stuff, but these are the important things to invest in. Your room, so in my case, like the acoustics in here, your monitoring, so in my case that's monitors, like speakers, but I would like to get some good headphones as well, and yeah, your converters, and then all the stuff comes after that. So as painful as that is, I know it's right, and it is something that I've been pretty strict with, and I now feel like it's going to really mean that the outboard that I get is well thought through and quite like an informed decision. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Hopefully, maybe this year, maybe next year, I'll get my first piece, and it will be very satisfying and very fun.
So what equipment have you gone for so far?
So my converter is a Lynx Hilo. A lot of people say that differently, which is just a AD/DA converter, and PMC 226s. So yeah, and the reason I went for these is Katie has basically the exact same setup, and I've shadowed her a lot. I've listened to hers a lot. And I did also try out some others, because Steve has the Neumanns and I really like those, but he has a sub and I couldn't get a sub because I'm in a home studio, as much as I would love a sub. So I was just like, I know I really like these. And as I say before, I was on Yamaha, so like you were saying, like it's a boring thing, but for me, the upgrade when I got my PMCs, it was like hearing rainbows. And then when I got the high-low, it was like rainbows times 10. It was honestly, the upgrade was amazing. So yeah, it's like been such a worthwhile investment, and it's the clarity that I have now with my monitoring just makes me second guess things less, which is such a big part. It's really helpful for me just being able to trust my setup, because I work quicker if I know that it's right.
Yeah, totally. So what, in your opinion, makes a good mastering engineer?
Oh, that's a big question.
That's a big question.
I think what makes a good mastering engineer is someone that really loves music and really loves all sorts of music, because you really do have to be able to adjust. You know, as I say, I could be working on folk in the morning, punk in the afternoon, and a massive club track in the like late afternoon sort of thing. So you really have to be adaptable, and you have to know how those should sound and how they should feel. I also think someone who is good at communication, because as I said earlier, often at the end of the process, you can kind of need to work a little bit harder to get things out of people because they're exhausted, they're burnt out, they've like thrown their heart and soul into this music and they just want it to be done a lot of the time. So, which I completely get, but yeah, it's important for me to be able to like empathize with that and get the little bits of information that I need out of them. And also someone who has basically just trained their ear really well. So as I say, I've just made sure I've spent a lot of time in my studio listening, which, because I'm such a music lover, is a very enjoyable thing to do. Like, if new albums come out, I'm so excited to come into the studio and listen to them in here. But it just means that I really do know my setup inside out and I really trust what I'm doing in here. So those would be the main things. But I think if you're wanting to give mastering a go, the main thing would just be training your ear, doing a lot of critical listening, and maybe listening to things that you wouldn't normally listen to. So when I was first starting, I was listening to loads of classical, because it's just so different to what I normally listen to. And I was kind of dissecting that in a way that I hadn't before. So yeah, those would be my three main things, I think.
No, that's all very, I think that's great. I mean, do you find that you enjoy a much wider variety of music now you've kind of opened your ears to? Absolutely.
I think I feel like this is quite a generic thing for every mastering engineer to say, but I really do feel like I love pretty much all genres of music. But it's given me just a newfound respect. I think now that I work in music and I really understand what goes into it, I really just have a newfound respect when I listen to an album and the journey that I go on. It really puts it all into perspective how much has gone into that. So yeah, I think, it's nice to be able to listen from that perspective now.
I mean, if anyone listening, if you want to expand your musical tastes and you really want to go for it, go for a big artist in a genre that you normally don't like, maybe even hate, and sit down and think to yourself, what is one thing I like about this piece of music, and go from there. And that's a really good way of starting to think through why other people like that music, and then you can appreciate it for yourself. Yeah, I love that. And that's like, interestingly, when I started, because a lot of the work is coming through Weird Jungle, and because of what Steve and Katie work on is a lot of kind of like rock and heavier stuff, which I do love, but it's definitely not necessarily my remit. In the past kind of 5-10 years, with being a DJ, it's a lot of electronic stuff. So, but it just really reignited my love for it, and listening to even just the references and stuff that people send over. I've discovered some amazing artists through one through working with them, but two through people sending reference playlists, and I've found 3 new artists that I'm like obsessed with. So it's things like that, and it's just being really open-minded, I think, as you said. And it's like, I wouldn't necessarily reach out, like that genre wouldn't normally appeal to me, but just going and listening to it in a different way, in a critical way, not critical as in to rip it apart, but critical as in, why have they made that decision? Why have they decided to pan things like that? Why have they decided for it to be this loud?
things like that. And I think, yeah, as I say, it gives you like a newfound appreciation, definitely.
So what are some common problems, or maybe challenges is probably a better way to put it, that you encounter when working with people who've recorded at home and maybe even mix themselves at home?
I honestly would say the biggest thing for self-recording artists is they just need to turn the vocals up. You know, when you're recording your own voice, and I get it completely, because if I hear my voice recorded, I'm like, what is that? Who is that? Obviously, I'm not a singer, but I understand it's that when it's your own voice. But so often it's the vocals. I'm just like, the vocals need to go up. So I would say if you're a self-recording vocalist, that would be a big one, is just try and put your fear aside and the self-consciousness aside, which I understand is very hard, and just turn the vocals up a bit. Because the problem is your ear, when there's vocals, your ear is drawn to that. So if it's not loud enough, it's really noticeable. So yeah, that would be my big one. Other issues, I mean, I honestly would say I don't really see it as so challenging, because I tend to just say like we should lean into it, and kind of, if you're doing it in a DIY sense, just kind of, yeah, lean into that and accept that it's maybe not going to be like the number one albums that you're hearing right now because of the limitations of recording and stuff like that. But yeah, and I think another big one would be sibilance. That can be quite a big one. And again, of just recording vocals with limitations, sibilance could be quite a big one. But generally, I think it's pretty amazing what people can achieve with like some of the mixes and songs that I get, and people are like, oh, I completely self-recorded this in my bedroom under a duvet, and I did this on, you know, on Ableton, and it's amazing. So again, I would never want that to put anyone off, and it's actually pretty crazy what we can do in mastering. Like quite often in my case, again, working with self-funded artists, maybe they only have the budget for mastering and they've literally done everything else themselves, and I would always say, just get it to the best point that you can. And if you think there's an issue with something, like there's a resonance or something, just tell me. That communication is really important, and I'll see what I can do. But yeah, it should never be like a big worry of, oh, I can't send that, or this isn't going to be finished because of that. Because yeah, we can do a lot in mastering.
There's lots of crazy plugins out there, aren't there, that can really do a lot now.
Yeah. Oh my God, Soothe. Soothe is insane.
Oh, yes. Yeah. I mean, it's interesting what you say about vocals, because I would think what a lot of artists might not necessarily realise, if they're not kind of actively thinking about it, is that a lot of people who listen to music, you know, they're not necessarily music lovers, they just listen to music, they enjoy it, it's part of life, is what draws in most people to most music is the vocal. And if it's not loud enough, then it's maybe not going to catch people's ear in the way that people want it to. So it's really important. Yeah,
it really is. And also, like, you are always going to be the most critical of your own vocals, and it's not just vocals, you know, if you're a guitarist, you're going to be extremely critical of your guitar performance. But a lot of other people will just be like, wow, look at that person absolutely shredding on guitar or doing these crazy backing vocals, and I want to hear more of it, is people's initial reaction. So yeah, I completely get it's really hard to detach yourself, but I think it's always gives the best results if you can, almost. And just try and keep everything at the forefront in those sorts of situations. Don't shy away, because as you say, it would be more noticeable if it was like missing or lacking than if it was a bit louder and you just didn't like your voice in that one line. People aren't going to notice that. They're really not.
It's one of those things, isn't it, that a lot of artists and bands might somehow be worried if they've got like a work in progress or whatever, and they're not quite sure about it for whatever reason it may be. They're maybe not sure about the performances or the mix they're doing, whatever it may be. It can be so important to get someone involved, either, you know, paying them to mix or master like myself and yourself, or just a friend who's really into music. Get them to listen and go, what do you think? That can be so important for kind of unlocking confidence, if nothing else, can't it?
Oh, 100%. And it's like a big thing that we always bang on about at Weird Jungle, is that the best things are born out of collaboration, and not everybody has to be competition. like, and my experience has been amazing getting into the music industry. Like, everyone has been so open and shared so much with me that I've been able to learn so much. But yeah, I think just it can be really, like, lovely things can be born out of just opening up. And as you say, sharing with someone. It can start off as a friend and then it could be a producer or, but I think it's just really important if you have the funds to be able to invite people into that process, because it's crazy how, like, yeah, self-critical you can be and how bogged down in details people can get. And it's like, you know, if they send it to you as the mix engineer, you don't have all of those hang-ups. And then even if, you know, spend days on a mix and then send it off to a mastering engineer, I don't have all those hang-ups. We're just coming at it with a fresh perspective and we just want it to sound the absolute best that it can. So I think it's really important if you're able to open up to collaboration like that, because it just breeds beautiful things. I really believe that.
Yeah. The music industry, I mean, to some people that's quite a scary word to use, but let's say the music scene, let's keep it quite, I guess, casual in that way, is seen by too many people, I think, as competition, rather than a potential opportunity to collaborate. And I think that's no more true than between bands and artists. That, you know, it can be tempting to go, well, you know, we're doing music that's maybe not dissimilar to what they're doing, but if we kind of, they're you know, they may be taking away listens from us, or people aren't coming to our gigs because they're going to their gigs. Whereas if you kind of go, well, how can we work together? How can we help each other? That's such a healthier way to do it, isn't it?
100%. And I think these things always come back around. Like, it was really interesting the other day, as I say, this is kind of our ethos at Weird Jungle anyway, but we went up to Press On, which is a vinyl pressing plant in Middlesbrough. And it was amazing. They were so lovely and they gave us a tour and they, you know, just let us see all of the process of pressing vinyl, and we were able to ask the cutting engineer loads of questions. And it's because we all just wanted to collaborate and get the absolute best out of the music for the artist that we were working with. But also they were saying how there's a few pressing plants in the UK actually now, which is great. But, you know, they don't necessarily see them as competition, even though they technically are. It's about helping them out. You know, say they needed some of the material that was needed to press vinyl. If they needed a bag of that, they'd give it to them, because maybe 2 months down the line they would need something and they'd be able to ask them. Do you know what I mean? It can all come back around. And at the end of the day, especially in music, even though people's heart and soul are going into it, it's not brain surgery or heart surgery that we're doing here. Like, we're just making music that is making people feel really good. So why does there have to be negativity around that? Like, you know, we're just making art essentially. So I think just trying to remember that, and as I say, not getting bogged down in details, and remembering that this is a creative outlet that for the most part people working in music got into because they love it. And yeah, I certainly try and like keep that at the forefront of my mind all the time, that I'm just feel so blessed and lucky that I get to work in music. That's something that I've loved my entire life.
It's always good fun.
Yeah.
Where you can look back and go, oh, cool. No, I'm really enjoying what I'm doing right now, which is always good.
Yeah, it's lovely.
So my penultimate question for you, what is your favourite thing, your favourite EP, album, single that you've worked on? And that's not to say that you don't like the other ones that you've worked on, but what's your favourite one that kind of stand out? Yeah,
I will stress that I really do love the nature of my job and the nature of working on so much stuff. So it is very hard to pick favourites. But something I really enjoyed working on is I've done a couple of tracks for Dreamwife, which are a really cool band. And they're just like absolute trailblazers, like incredible live, like punk rock, political, just super cool. And yeah, I did some tracks for them and that's always been really fun. But generally I tend to, as I say, I've got a newfound love for that genre. But generally it's things that are like electronic and almost like jazz and neo soul. I worked on a really cool live session for an artist recently called Amala. It was all recorded at the Royal Albert Hall.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, and she's got this insane, like, old style jazz voice that kind of sounds like it's from the 50s. And yeah, this beautiful live session. And it was a super long track, but I just loved it. I loved the journey that I went on with that track, and it's challenging but fun to work on live things. So those would be some standouts. But generally, I'm just a lover of working on so much music.
Well, I'll make sure in the description below this podcast, which is weird because I'm in real life, but when you're on your phone, below this podcast, I'll make sure there's some links in there so you can go and have a listen to those. So my final question for you is, what is your best piece of advice for artists nowadays? And that's deliberately a very wide open question.
For artists, it would be, I think it would be what we spoke about earlier, be really open to collaboration. And just try and remember the love for music. I understand it's very hard, especially with it being sometimes like difficult to make money from and things like that. But yeah, being open to collaboration and just reaching out to people and also finding communities that can help you. So in my case, I'm part of a few communities that are mainly surrounded kind of or based on getting women and gender minorities into music. So as I mentioned earlier, Saffron, they've got like an online members circle, which is great. And I've connected with so many people through that. And there's also one called 2% Rising, which was actually co-founded by Katie. And I've done I like host their listening parties where we all share feedback for artists and things like that. And it's just been really lovely to connect with people in those spaces because it feels like a safe space for me. And it's bred some beautiful collaboration. So those would be my things. Be open to collaboration, find your people and find your communities. And the other one that I said, which I've now forgotten.
Don't worry.
It'll be in there somewhere.
It's in there somewhere. You can rewind and find it.
That's how bad my memory is.
Don't worry, I'm also the same. So there we go. Cool. Well, Izzy, I'll make sure that links to Saffron and 2% Rising are also in the show notes so people can go and find out about those.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah. Cool. Izzy, well, thank you very much.
Thank you. It's been lovely to chat.
So, thank you for listening to another episode of the Music Survivor Guide podcast. I think there were loads of great nuggets of wisdom there, loads of things to take away, and of course a good old talk about the world of mastering and what it's like. All the links, as I discussed, should be in the description below on this episode. There's links to the music that she's worked with Dreamwife, with Amala, and then a link to Saffron and 2% Rising, which we discussed. Really, really important things. Go check them out. Some great links in there. Go read, go find out. So, if you like this episode, please rate and review the podcast wherever you listen. It all helps the algorithm, of course. Please also share it with any friends and bandmates if you thought it was helpful. You want to discuss about mastering and things like that. Or you're thinking about working with Izzy, of course. That would be a great thing to do. If you're thinking about recording or mixing and you want to talk about it, feel free to reach out to me via the links in the podcast description below, and I will see you next time.